Support for This News is So Gay comes from the LGBTQ Opportunity Fund of the Cleveland Foundation, leveraging philanthropy to empower LGBTQ communities. Welcome to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck, editor of The Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ newsroom. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's what we're covering on this week's brand new episode. Gayborhoods, one of my favorite topics to discuss. How are Gayborhoods faring in our cities? Misinformation and disinformation. It's definitely making queer journalism pretty gosh darn harder to do well these days. What are some folks doing to combat false narratives? There are yet again some people you might not know, but soon will in our latest round of Who the Heck Is That? And of course, queer joy. Where is our roundtable finding queer joy in the news right now? Joining us this week to answer those questions and so many more, managing editor for the Windy City Times and the reigning Chicago Journalist of the Year, but always reigning in our hearts no matter what year it is, Jake Wittich. Jake, welcome back to This News is So Gay.
Hello, it is so good to be back.
It's good, and I know you're recovering from a cold, and so we are benefiting from your voice being back.
Yes, I could not talk yesterday, but my voice is back in the nick of time to record this podcast.
Love it. And former editor of and frequent contributor to Philadelphia Gay News, and it will always be said, I'll say it every single time, an original roundtable member of the pilot of This News is So Gay years and years and years ago when we were only 14 or 15. Jason Villemez. Jason, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for having me. You are the original.
Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it. That just called me old. That's okay. Our LGBTQ Reporters Roundtable is now assembled, so let's dive in. In a segment I have yet to name, but if someone has a name for this, send me an email at editor@thebuckeyeflame.com if you have a clever name for this part of the show that I think we're just going to do every week, and I will send you a Buckeye Flame hoodie, panelists included. Let's check in to see how queer journalists are doing. Jake, how are you doing?
Honestly, I'm doing pretty good. As you mentioned, I just got over a cold, but I'm excited to be back in the grind, in the thick of things. There's a lot of news that's happening in queer Illinois, queer Chicago, and I want to cover it all.
Well, you are going to do it. Jason, how are you holding up?
I'm doing pretty good as well. You know, we're deep into primary season here in Philadelphia. And because Philadelphia is so democratic, the primary is really where the big political battles happen, the really interesting races. And we've got a really interesting race for the congressperson for the Gayborhood that has been continually fascinating to see where the queer community is going to go. And it's an exciting time. Hopefully we'll be electing someone who's going to completely support the community and keep it as vibrant as it can be.
Well, we will find out soon enough. Well, let's dive into some of the news out there. One topic I am obsessed with, I talk about it all the time, is this concept of Gayborhoods, their history, their relevance, their current struggles. Jason, we seem to be having some Gayborhood drama there in Philadelphia. Tell us about it.
Always drama in the Gayborhood in Philadelphia. It's inescapable. Honestly, since the 70s, I will say. But the current Gayborhood drama in 2026 is the Gayborhood is in a neighborhood in Philadelphia called Washington Square West. It's a very historic neighborhood. We've got the first hospital in the country, many historic buildings, such as founding fathers lived there. Things were created there. And in the past, if you had a historic building, you could individually apply, or someone could individually apply to make your building historic through the Historic Commission, which basically meant that it's harder to change the exterior because you want to keep it historic, you want to keep it lovely for tourists, and also to preserve the personality of the neighborhood. Recently, the entire neighborhood of Washington Square West was made historic. So not just individual buildings, all 1,400 buildings were made historic.
Oh my.
This was actually taken to court because, as I mentioned, it can be expensive to do repairs. If you have a historic building, it takes longer because you have to go through a permitting process. And so a lot of people said, look, I can't afford to keep my building if it's historic because I can't afford the more expensive repairs. And so people sued that designation for the neighborhood was taken away, but now it's back, it's being arbitrated. So the reason this affects the Gayborhoods so tremendously, number one, is because a lot of our gay bars and restaurants find it difficult at times to do necessary renovations because of the historical designation. And number two, our community center, our lovely William Way Community Center, is in Washington Square West. The community center is in disrepair. It's got black mold. It has water damage all over the building. It's had continual HVAC problems, roof problems. So the center staff and programs actually had to vacate the building in December. So they're no longer there. The problem now is, how do you fix this building with this crazy historic designation? Enter a nonprofit who is proposing to create a brand new building with affordable LGBT senior housing and a brand new community center, which will be given to the community center. They want to do this building, but they're running into continual opposition with the Historic Commission and the neighborhood, basically saying, well, no, we need to preserve the neighborhood. So the question, I suppose, is, what is historic about neighborhoods? What makes neighborhoods vibrant? Is it the buildings or is it the people? And I think you have two sides to this coin that people are taking. And so this neighborhood drama, as I said, never ends through the decades, but that's the current drama.
Also, if everything is historic, is anything historic? 1,400 buildings all in one swath. That doesn't seem very special.
Trust me, 1,400 buildings in Wash West are not historic. I would take a very educated guess and say maybe 100 are historic, not 1,400.
Oh boy. And then we turn to Chicago. Now, I am obsessed with rebranding and how we talk about Gayborhoods. I cannot believe, Jake, it's actually been more than 5 years since the North Halstead Business Alliance. By the way, I really feel that North Halstead should have 2 H's. Am I just totally wrong in that, Jake?
It is a little funky because it is North Halstead Street. That's the street it's on. But for the Chamber of Commerce, they smashed it together.
Okay, that's for another episode, but we might be leading a fight against that at some point. But it has been more than 5 years since the North Halstead Business Alliance announced that they were officially changing the name of Chicago's Gayborhood from Boys Town to North Halstead, 1H. And there were really strong reactions at the time. Is this something, Jake, that people are still talking about? Because it seems like from the outside that actually people kind of quickly moved on.
So this was it was a Gayborhood drama, and basically the activist Devlin Camp, who led this movement to get the North Halstead Business Alliance to stop referring to the neighborhood as Boys Town, actually moved to New York City not long afterward. So I think the driving force behind this, they've since moved, so they're no longer in Chicago. What I hear today is kind of a mixed bag in how people refer to the neighborhood. I do hear North Halstead a lot, and the reason for this name change was Devlin Camp and some other activists felt like the name Boys Town was not very inclusive of women and gender nonconforming people. So they wanted a name that they didn't request North Halstead as the name. They just said, let's do a new name, And I think the important context here is that it's not like an official neighborhood name change. Boys Town is not an official neighborhood. If you look at the community area boundaries of Chicago, it's a section of the Lakeview community area. And the community areas, I guess, are equivalent to neighborhoods, you could say. So all it really is a marketing decision. The North Halstead Business Alliance is the Chamber of Commerce that represents the businesses in that Boys Town, North Halstead strip. And they had previously been marketing the neighborhood as Boys Town. And what they did is they stopped marketing it as that, and now all promotional materials use North Halstead, which just pulls from the Chamber of Commerce's name.
I just can't. It's not like I didn't listen to you, Jake, but I'm still on the 2 H's part. That's still where I am with the story. I do remember, is there still was it a vegan or vegetarian diner that's kind of in that strip there? That thing was one of the best meatloafs I've ever had in my life.
Yes, the Chicago Diner. And actually, she no longer works there, but one of the activists was either a manager or like a lead server at the Chicago Diner during the time of this campaign. She actually talked about how, when I interviewed her, I was at Block Club Chicago at the time, not Windy City Times. But when I spoke with her, she said that she's been in neighborhood meetings where sexist things were said, and
Yeah.
that was kind of her reason for doing this push. It wasn't so much about the name. They wanted the name plus they also wanted the neighborhood to have serious conversations, maybe take some DEI trainings about being more inclusive of women, trans and gender nonconforming people, and things like that. And I will say, I do see a lot more women-centered nights happening in the North Halsted Strip. There's one bar, Scarlet, that has, I think they call it the girlfriend hours, and it's basically for the girls, gays, and theys, and it's a lot of it's fun. I've been once, it's a lot of lesbian pop artists like Chapel Roan. It was a blast. Sidetrack's like the big bar we have every last Saturday of the month is Sapphic Saturday, which is a lesbian theme party. So there's a lot more lesbian nights happening throughout the neighborhood. So I do see more effort. Bars are hiring more women. So even if the name change hasn't fully stuck with everyone, I do think that efforts are happening in the neighborhood to be more inclusive.
And I should highlight from a journalist integrity standpoint, no goods were exchanged for me to endorse the meatloaf of the Chicago Diner, but I am more than prepared from here on out if they want to reach out to me to start saying that This News is So Gay is brought to you by the Chicago Diner. So you guys let me know. I will take it in trade because that meatloaf was really good. Moving on, one of the things that we are constantly struggling with in our LGBTQ plus media landscape is misinformation. Jake, I was fascinated to read about, and I've never seen this word before, a transquake in Chicago and the connection to misinformation. Tell us all about that.
Last month, April 25th, there was a transquake that happened in the Chicago area, and it shook the city. And basically, what it was, there is a local transgender scientist. Their name is Jay McCrite. They were launching this play. It was playful. It wasn't a true scientific experiment, but they were leading a scientific experiment testing the question, what happens if transgender people become too powerful all at once? It really wasn't a serious hypothesis, but this experiment was dubbed the Transquake. And basically what the Transquake was a worldwide day of action with an in-person event that happened in Chicago in which trans people from all over the world were encouraged to share stories of trans joy, expressions of trans pride, in real life, on the internet, using the hashtag Transquake wherever they were. Then this event in Chicago was a variety show. They had comedians, drag performers, burlesque, all trans artists, and then Jay McCrite gave like a Bill Nye the Science Guy type talk,
Love.
little experiment where they expressed all their trans joy at once, and they were going to see, like, are trans people as dangerous as the forces against us claim they are? Will there be an earthquake? Will lightning strike? Anything like that. So it was just a silly, playful experiment, and it was designed to counter misinformation surrounding trans people. A lot of lawmakers and public figures increasingly invoke scientific terms like biology and sex, to deny trans people's existence. So this was Jay McCrite's way of kind of turning that on its head and saying, like, okay, you want to talk science? Let's test it.
Oh, that's amazing. It led me down this path of looking at different things that you've written about, Jason. Jason, by the way, you're kind of the official historian. Everybody's going to get a title, all of our regular panels. I don't know what you are yet, Jake. We'll get there. But Jason, you're kind of the official historian of This News is So Gay in the same way that Lauren Chapman is our official sports ball correspondent. And so it led me to some of your writing, and I loved reading about these times before there was disinformation and misinformation that we were combating in this way. And a whole piece you wrote about when books actually outnumbered other pieces of media in our media landscape. Talk to us about that.
That's right. Yeah. In 1976, Philadelphia Gay News published 20 book reviews. This included exposés on the Catholic Church, wonderful novels. It only published 17 film reviews that year,
Mm,
and several of the films had no LGBT content. This sort of disproportionate representation, I think, was really cool because back in the 50s and 60s, not only were there no, gay films, gay TV characters, really gay role models, there also really weren't any gay books. There were, maybe a couple medical texts that described homosexuality as a pathology, maybe a couple sort of law texts that described it as illegal. but you didn't have, lovely novels with characters that are affirmed. You didn't have historic information about queer communities that, built amazing things. And so when you got to the 70s, you had just incredible book coverage in the PGN and also in papers around the country. We would have full page, multi page ads from publishers. And I think the real high point for LGBT books was, I would say, probably 1995. And I say this because that was the year that Greg Louganis put out his memoir, which was the highest seller for not only every gay bookstore in the country, but at that point, that week it came out, it was the highest seller for regular bookstores as well.
That was big.
You had massive lines out the street to get it signed, and I think the point was that people took information more seriously. Before we had the internet, before we had our TikToks, if you read something in a book or a newspaper, you took it seriously. Part of it, I think, is because you had it in your hands. You physically had it in your hands. Also, someone had to go through a lot of work to print that paper. And so it was a lot harder to print something lackadaisical. Whereas nowadays, you can go on TikTok and you can promote your lunch you had. You can promote, the random flower you saw. It's a lot easier to just put anything out there. So way back when, misinformation, I think, was a lot less because we had to work a lot harder to get things out there.
Yeah. The three of us have all been in the position where we've received pitches, right? Like where folks are reaching out to us saying, hey, please cover this. And I will be 100% upfront with this. And I get nervous that this will get me in trouble, though I actually have said this on the podcast before. And I will also preamble this saying what I'm about to say causes me physical pain as well. As an author, we're going to check in with Jason a little later on to see how his book is going. Jake, I'm excited for your book. We got to talk through it, right? That said, the pitches that go nowhere with me these days, sadly, are book reviews or coverage of new books coming out. And this is the part that's going to cause me pain, saying it out loud, but I want to be transparent. There is hardly any other type of content on the Buckeye Flames site that gets less traffic than when we write about a book. Again, that pains me, right? That's horrible. But I don't know. I don't know, Jake, if that's been your reality as well, Jason. And I write to each person, I say, I'm so sorry. And as someone who has 4 books out there in the world, and I'm proud of each one of them, this is horrible for me to be responding to you in this way. And it's not like we only do things for clicks. But you're expecting some big boom from me publishing a piece about your book, and I'm telling you in advance it's not going to happen.
Yeah, we need like a Chicago hook for a book, something that's really going to. I recently did a story with author Timothy Schrader Rodriguez. His memoir, Conversion Therapy Dropout, actually just came out this week. And he lived in Chicago for some time. I felt like it was a timely book to be coming out because of the recent Supreme Court ruling relating to conversion therapy. So I took that story, but also he had an event coming up in Chicago. There were so many reasons for me to cover this one, and that story did well, but I feel like it was a bit of an anomaly there because of those news pegs that I had.
I feel terrible saying it.
It's the same for PGN. I said we did 20 book reviews in 1976. In 2025, we did 2.
It doesn't mean people shouldn't keep writing. Please keep writing, folks. But yes, that local connection is very important. And it's a stretch how some people say they have an Ohio connection. Finding us on a map is not necessarily the connection that we need. So we'll work on that as well. Okay, let's move on to one of my favorite segments. Let's play a few rounds of Who the Heck Is That? This is where we tell you about some LGBTQ plus folks whose names you might not know, but you should. Jason, let's start with you for round 1. Who were Harry Langhorne, Jack Friel, George Hodges, and Jeff Britton? And why do those names matter in a trend that you highlighted there at PGN?
So those 4 men, and I want to point out Harry Langhorne was one of the earliest writers for Philadelphia Gay News, so shout out to Harry. They ran for committee person in 1976, and committee people are basically the first representative for a district in the city of Philadelphia. They primarily get out the vote, they knock on doors, they also vote for ward leaders, which is the next step up in our districts in Philadelphia. And one thing that people realize at that point is that it was very easy to get elected as a committee person. If you got, 9 or 10 people to vote for you, you'd probably win. And so Harry Langhorne specifically thought that this was a great way for gay people to win elected office, this first level office of committee person. And so he basically called people to say, hey, you should talk to your friends and run for this elected office because you could very well win. They ended up winning election, and it was a really amazing thing, not only because they were people who, again, gay people at the time didn't run for elected office. You had Elaine Noble, I believe, in 1978, who was elected in the Massachusetts State House. This was 1976, so this was even 2 years before the first. You also had Harvey Milk around the same time, 1978 as well. And so these were real heroes, not only to lead the charge for LGBT people in politics, but also for LGBT people to come out in general. So really big applause for those four men.
I also do want to highlight part of a wider piece on good news. And I have to tell you, Jason, I so appreciated that because we are in this constant struggle, especially as a statewide newsroom that does largely specialize in covering LGBTQ legislation in Ohio, which usually translates into anti-LGBTQ plus legislation in Ohio. We are constantly challenging ourselves to remember, that's right, queer joy, queer joy, queer joy. There are good news stories out there. So thank you so much for highlighting all these different queer news happy stories out there. That's round one done. Let's move on to round two. I get a little nervous. I'm going to mangle this name, but round two, Jake, who is S. Gronkowitz Doran?
You nailed it.
No way. Oh, I feel really good. The podcast is over now, folks. Have a great week. But all right, fine. Jake, tell us about S. Gronkowitz Doran.
S. Gronkowitz Doran is a organizer in the 45th Ward who is running for alderperson. These are some terms I should explain. So Chicago is split into 50 different wards, and each ward has its own alderperson, which is like a mini mayor who oversees that part of Chicago, and the alder people make up city council. So we have 50 city council members, which some would say is way too many compared to other cities. And S. Gronkowitz Doran wants to be the first transgender person elected to Chicago City Council. So they recently announced their bid for election. The election is not until February of next year, but they are challenging an incumbent alderman. His name is Jim Gardner. And he's kind of got a history of controversy. I won't get too far into it. If you want to learn more, I recommend going to Block Club Chicago. They've done a lot of thorough coverage of this Alderman Jim Gardner, but S. Gronkowitz Doran wants to basically unseat him, and they are running on a platform of affordability and what they say is a need for more responsive local leadership.
Love to see it. The only reason I know what an alderman is because there was a whole storyline arc on that wonderful documentary about Chicago called ER. And I really do believe that was a documentary. So we're putting that out there. But what we are also putting out there is This News is So Gay, because that's what you all are listening to. I'm your host, Ken Schneck from the Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ plus newsroom. Joining us this week, Jake Wittich from the Windy City Times and Jason Villemez from Philadelphia Gay News. By the by, if you are not subscribed to what you are listening to right this very second, what on earth are you waiting for? Subscribe to This News is So Gay right this very second on your favorite podcasting app so that new episodes automatically make their way to you, which they will continue to do because we just got renewed for season 2. So season 2 coming at you very, very soon. Well, it is time, folks. It is time for Glitter Bomb. This is where our roundtable shares stories of queer joy that they are seeing covered out there in the news. So let's set off a Glitter Bomb. Jake, give us a story of queer joy that you want us to know about.
Yeah, my story of queer joy actually relates to Tracy Baim, who is a LGBTQ plus media pioneer, living legend, and co-founder of Windy City Times, where I work. Currently, I am teaching a class on LGBTQ plus journalism at Northwestern University, and Tracy Baim was so gracious. She came to the most recent class I had and spoke to the students for about a whole hour. We just had an amazing conversation with Tracy about her career, the challenges facing queer media today. There are a lot of them, and she spoke very honestly about them. And she just gave her perspective on why outlets like Windy City Times, the Buckeye Flame, and PGN are still so important today. So it was a beautiful conversation. These students are so lucky they got to meet Tracy Bame, and I hope they feel it. So that's the joy. I feel so grateful Tracy would do this for me and my students, and that's my queer joy.
Oh, that was amazing. And quite frankly, for the Buckeye Flame to be in that little category of 3 that you just put was wonderful. Jason, give us a story of queer joy.
So going back to the Gayborhood theme, I am super excited because we normally have our Pride Festival in the Gayborhood. It's very crowded. The streets are narrow. There's not a lot of shade, especially in the main sort of part of where it is. And so this year, our Pride organizers are moving our Pride celebration to the Parkway, which is a beautiful tree-lined, massive street leading to the art museum. Tons of room for people to walk around, tons of trees for shade. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I just think it's a great idea. It allows more people to get in there, and it's gonna, I think, just make a great, 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 great celebration in June.
That is very exciting.
We have that conversation every year in Chicago. Do we keep the Pride Parade in the North Halstead Boys Town area, or do we move it downtown? And there's a lot of people that are like, our history is here. We need to keep it here. But who knows? So that's cool to hear that another city is doing that.
Pride season almost upon us. And finally, the Met Gala isn't upon us. It is now behind us. And there were some wild looks for this year's theme of costume art. So for this week's quick queer culture question, do you have a favorite queer fashion moment? Jake Wittich, a queer fashion moment?
Yeah, it is not from the recent Met Gala, but just I think my favorite fashion moment was Lady Gaga's meat dress.
Done.
Probably the fashion moment of my lifetime. So it was controversial, it was edgy, and it was everything I loved about Lady Gaga when I was growing up. So
wonderful. Jason, tell us a queer fashion moment?
Honestly, my favorite queer fashion moment is anything Janelle Monáe wears. That's it.
Done. I honestly think it's just going to be a recurring segment. It keeps coming. Janelle Monáe keeps coming up every week. So we love that. Well, we certainly want to hear what you are working on. What's coming up for you? Jake, what's going on there in Chicago for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret Pride Month is around the corner. We are counting down the weeks, the days until Pride Month begins. And at Windy City Times, we are putting together the ultimate Chicago Guide to Pride. So it's going to launch officially late May, and it's basically going to be a microsite. So like a mini homepage where we'll have features every week. We've got a recurring series called Pioneers of Pride, where we're going to be profiling various queer elders every week. We're going to have how-to guides on how people can take action amid the current political environment, how they can get involved in the community, volunteer. We've got so many resources coming your way, and I just can't wait to bring them to everyone this Pride Month.
That is so exciting. The Buckeye Flame put out our Pride Guide last week. It is ongoing. It's about 140 Pride celebrations all across the state of Ohio, disproportionately on June 27th. I wish folks would speak to each other more, but that's where we are. Jason, what's coming up for you?
So keeping with my newly appointed job title of historian of the podcast, thank you, Ken, I am working on a piece about police entrapment. So in the 70s in PGN, you have classified ads for men wanting to meet men, men wanting to meet in groups. Sadly, there was a time when the police departments in New Jersey would take out classified ads for the explicit purpose of just entrapping gay people. And this happened not just in PGN, it happened in papers all around the country. And obviously it ruined these people's lives for no other reason other than they were gay. So that's the latest feature I'm working on. Also, my continual efforts to finish my novel is...
I was going to say, book update 26. Let's go.
That's right. It's going really well. I'm on, I think, what will be the final draft, according to my agent, which... I keep saying, like, I'm going to die before I put this out, but she's like, nope, just keep going, keep going. So I think this will be it. It's going really well. It's a pure joy, and it's hopefully the gayest novel ever written.
Amazing. If there's an Ohio connection, we're so excited to do a book review of it, I should say. We'll work on it.
We'll see.
Well, you both rock. That's sadly all the time that we have for this week. And I, of course, want to thank our roundtable. Jake Wittich, love everything you are doing there in Chicago.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Those partnerships with you and Anna Deshawn, I just want to sit in the room and learn from both of you. That's going pretty darn well, huh?
It's amazing. I love working with Anna. We are close friends now. We work the same way. We work just as hard, but also it's so easy to work with each other because we share the same values. So it's just amazing.
When she comments on a Facebook post of mine, I'm like, why are you commenting? You're Anna Deshawn. So that's where I am with Anna. Jason, let's keep that book momentum going. Thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
I'm Ken Schneck, editor of The Buckeye Flame. And if you liked this episode of This News is So Gay, please share it with a friend. Subscribe so that you do not miss out on our next episode. Send an email on over to editor@thebuckeyeflame.com. That's me, to let us know your thoughts, and rate and review us on your favorite podcasting app. This News is So Gay is a product of The Buckeye Flame, a nonprofit newsroom. Become a recurring donor today for as little as $12.50 a month, which truly enables programming just like this from a scrappy queer newsroom just like ours. In the meantime, read LGBTQ+ news, share the stories of LGBTQ+ reporters, and support the work of LGBTQ+ newsrooms. Until next week, friends.